Good.
Just adjusting my sound here.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's 7:03 on October 28th, 2020. This is the Village of Amerenik Planning Board meeting, a regularly scheduled meeting. I call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of minutes. Everybody's okay? From our meeting of June 24th, 2020. Does anybody have any comments on these minutes?
Just that they looked good.
That's what I think that Barbara is doing a really good job with minutes. Does anybody have anything else to add to that? I have no comments, no corrections, nothing whatsoever.
Nope, look good.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented to us? We just have to remove the word draft from the file.
So moved.
Second?
Cindy,
Yes.
Richard,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Lou, you're muted. If you want to vote yes, unmute yourself, or you can vote
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
vote yes. Okay. The item is done. Okay, the second item on the agenda is continuing the public hearing for 355 Phillips Park Road. At the last meeting 2 weeks ago, we just had some loose ends with regards to the landscape plan. We are presented tonight with a resolution and a landscape plan that's still dated March, even though we know it's a later version. Before we close the public hearing, are there any further comments on this particular project? Does the applicant have anything to say to the board, or?
Yes, Madam Chair, the applicant is wishing to speak.
I'm sorry, William, I didn't hear you.
The applicant is wants to speak. I'm bringing him in now.
My speaker must be too loud. I'm getting feedback. Okay. Oh, here she comes. Here comes Christy Adana. Okay. Ms. Adana, do you have anything to say tonight?
Good evening, board members. Christy Adana for the record. I just raised my hand to indicate that I was present for the board's knowledge. If you had any questions for me or my client who is also here. We did revise the plan, the landscape plan, as was discussed at the last meeting in coordination with Ms. Oakley. I do believe it says last revised October 16th, 2020. The March was the initial date. So I believe that should be, and it was indicated in the draft resolution that has been prepared for the board's consideration. We've reviewed the resolution and we think it's great as is. So if the board would consider closing the public hearing and voting on the resolution, that would be our request this evening.
Okay. Does anybody from the board have any questions for the applicant or any comments or anything?
I just want a clarification. I think this is a bit of a typo. Under the conditions number 2, we're referring to the third-party independent licensed inspectors / engineers in the beginning part of that, but the 4th line from the bottom just says third-party inspectors. I'm just wondering, to be consistent, if we should also have / engineers.
That was actually Ms. Goldstein, that we had suggested the possibility that engineers would be the ones that would be performing the inspections, given the level of qualification that would be necessary. And I agree with you, that was an oversight on our part, that it wasn't included in that location as well. So if the board is amenable to it, that was on me.
Thank you. Not everybody would say that, but it just makes sense. It's not changing anything.
I agree with you. I completely agree.
And again, but just before we close the public hearing, on that same page, the first whereas clause. So we're talking about the Terabella Land Design Memoranda. There's an X for October. Would that be 27th?
Yeah, it came in yesterday, I think. Yeah, I think it's dated.
Mhm.
Okay, so that, those would be my only thoughts on that, not that we needed the hearing open for that, but
Anybody else? Okay, before we close the public hearing, let's make sure is there any members of the public who wish to comment on this application before we close the hearing?
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone wishing to speak.
Okay. Okay, all right, so then I need a motion to close this public hearing.
so moved.
Second,
Okay, Lou,
Yes.
John,
yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes,
and I vote yes. Okay, and then we have a resolution before us as amended just now. We added the date for that was final communication on this project to be yesterday, and we added a little clarification on the second condition, which just doesn't really change anything. So do I have a motion to accept this resolution to pay, I guess what do we do? Yeah, pass the resolution as amended.
so moved.
Second,
We got a thing going here. between- Okay, all right, so there's a motion on the table. Richard?
Yes.
Lou says yes.
Yes.
For me, yes.
John?
yes.
Cindy?
What they said, yes.
And I also say yes. Okay, good luck. And thank you for all the work you did on this project with us, and let's hope that it's a good addition to the Village of Mamaroneck. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is another open public hearing for a wetlands permit at 22 Lake Road. The applicant seeks to replace and expand an existing deck within a wetlands buffer zone. I see the agenda says wetlands, but we're not in the wetlands, we're just in the buffer zone. This application was also before us at the last meeting, and we basically didn't have many questions for them then. So before we close the public hearing, does anyone have any questions for this applicant at this point in time? No. Is the applicant here? Do they want to address this board for any reason?
Madam Chair, the applicant is not present,
Okay,
and
council's not present either?
no, and it doesn't appear that anyone from the public wishes to speak.
Okay, all right, okay. So we need a motion then to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second,
I just looked right at Cindy and John. All right, okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve, pass this resolution for wetlands permit to allow the applicant to.
No. We're closing the hearing. first.
Don't we need to vote on that?
Oh, I knew I was tired today. Yes, we need to close the public hearing. Thanks for catching me. Right. Okay, let's start with Cindy.
Yes,
Okay, Richard,
Yes.
John,
yes.
and Lou,
Yes.
and I vote yes to close the public hearing. All right, I got ahead of myself. Okay, now we have a resolution before us to approve the wetlands permit for the replacement of the deck. Do I have a motion?
so moved.
Second,
John wasn't going to speak unless you did, Cindy. All right,
We don't get paid by the motions.
okay, let's start with John.
yes.
Richard,
Yes.
Lou,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes,
and I vote yes. Okay, that passed. We didn't have any changes on that one. Okay, that's all the business that's been carried over. Now the planning board is going to go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. For members of the board, we need to leave this meeting and dial into the other meeting. That you got another Zoom link for the executive session portion of this meeting. And for people watching this, we will come back when we're finished with executive session and basically have no other business, so we'll just be closing the meeting.
So, Madam Chair, who's going into the executive session? Is
The
it-
members of the board and William,
Okay, so,
You,
okay.
council will stay out.
yes, please.
Is it a matter, it's not a matter I'm recused on, is it, Kathy?
No, it is not.
It is not, okay.
Part of it you are, but not all of it.
So just half leave, John.
Right, right. The part you're accused on has no bearing on what we're going to discuss.
Okay,
I mean, no, substantive bearing. Okay. All right. So yes, we want you with us, John. You don't get out of it this time.
I
You've
better
been,
go find, I better go find the different link though, so
let's,
catch up with
It
you.
was in an email October 24th. You'll-
Okay, thank
from
you.
If not, I'll send it again.
Okay.
Just really
great,
quick, I'll send it again.
Great.
okay.
All right.
Okay.
Chair, I'm
Those of
gonna,
you who won't be back when we come, won't be here when we come back. Have a good evening. It was nice to see you. all.
thank you.